call meeting of the Fayette County School Corporation Board of School Trustees business meeting to order. We are here at the Administration Building. It's Tuesday, September 8th, 2020, 6:30 p.m. Let's all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome, everybody. Okay, we're going to start right off with Ms. Corsaro sharing with us about the FCSC My School Online update.
Good evening. I handed out a paper to you at the beginning just to kind of give you some talking points. I am going to kind of give you an update where we are with FCSC My School Online. So starting out with just the numbers, we started with 441 online learners, and as of today we have 395 online learners. So we are going down, but we still have a number of students that are accessing our instruction through My School Online. Approximately 81% of our students K-12 are fulfilling the agreed terms of the FCSC My School Online, which means logging in when their classes are in attendance, completing the assignments, making connections with the school liaison, and then coming in and doing any kind of end-of-course assessments or state assessments that they need to do. We have approximately 19% of students that are somewhere on a continuum of meeting those terms. We have some who are very inconsistent. They may log into one of their 4 classes, or they may log in for an hour and then they disappear, or they log in and they turn the camera off and we don't see them, all the way to the other side of that continuum where we have about probably 10% of our students, maybe 30 to 40 students district-wide, that are doing minimal to no work at all. And so what we've been doing with those students is principals, teachers, school liaisons are trying to reach out to these kids and help them with figure out why it's not working for them, if we can provide them with additional support, and we've even offered to have them come back to our traditional school. I know I spent a couple of days myself talking to high school students and saying, you know, we're 3 weeks in, you need to be making sure that this is the option that you want to continue. You know, if it's not, you can come back to traditional school. So we're going to continue to work with those students who are struggling to fulfill all of those requirements. But of that 19%, they're kind of all on a continuum of where they fit in terms of success rate. Some successes, I think overall, just the fact that we were able to, our staff was able to kick off the remote learning and the synchronized learning at the beginning of the school year is a success in itself. Our teachers put in and administrators put in a tremendous amount of work making sure that that would happen the first day, and it did, and I think that's a success in itself. We've also been able to provide the students who have either been ill or have been quarantined with a school experience for those 14 days or 10 days, depending on how long they're out, because they could log on to the e-learning site, the remote learning, and continue their education so they didn't fall behind. So that's also a success. With our successes, I think we will all agree that there have been lots of challenges. This was uncharted territory for all of us. I think, you know, hindsight's always 20/20, and I think you can pre-plan as much as you think you can and think you have all of the answers, but until you get into it and you start living it, you have to be reflective and make some changes. So I think as we've moved forward, we've tried to listen to our families, our students, and our staff, and there are some areas that we feel like we need to address, and we're working to address those. And so I just kind of wanted to make sure that you guys knew what those areas were. So we have 3 that we've kind of summarized down to, and that would be time, which is collaboration and planning for both the traditional and the My School Online, professional development needs, with My School Online, and just technology in general. People are at different levels, so we need to provide some basic training, but we also need to provide some differentiated training for our staff. And then also, as you know, we had some technology, things that did, getting the technology was a hurdle that we had to start with. And then once we got it, it was getting it out. And we're still working on trying to get everybody's technology issues resolved. We're not gonna sit here and say that we have everything resolved, because we don't. So those are the 3 areas that I feel like we as a district are trying to address and recognize our issues for our staff and our students and our families. And we're trying to be reflective, we're trying to be keep that growth mindset, that as we move forward, we know there are going to be changes, and we try to do them so that we make sure that when we do make a change, it's in the best interest of our students and our staff and our families. So that's just kind of an overview of where we are at this point. And I think we all recognize we have a long way to go, but I want to definitely make sure that our staff and our students are recognized for the hard work, because Scott and I had a conversation a couple days ago. We haven't been in the classroom for a very long time. And most of our administrators haven't either. And that's where the hard work is taking place. And so it's hard to say, I understand, because we haven't been there. But we do hear them, and we do want to support them, and we are working to do that. So we want to make sure that's recognized.
This is not directly related to this, and I just thought of it right now, otherwise I would have asked you where I could ask this question. I know we talked at the end of the year, last year, that there was going to be testing done sooner rather than later this semester to kind of see what loss some kids might have had. So do we have, is that planned out?
NWA is already in progress, and a lot of schools have already finished it.
Okay.
We are struggling to get some of our My School Online students in.
Okay.
But yes, testing started as soon as that window opened, and again, that's another thing that our teachers were expected to do, and our parents and our students. So a lot going on, and we recognize that.
Yeah.
And we are creating an alternate site at the Magic Moments facility. Our maintenance team's been working on getting that right, because some parents are just fearful bringing their kids in, even in the high school or another school where they won't have contact directly. So we are finishing that up, just to have that as an alternate site too.
Right.
Kim, how many liaison officers do we have, and can you tell me a little bit about their success?
We have one per school right now. We have not been able to secure a district level liaison, so I've been assuming that role, and that's why I was calling for the high school the other day, and I'm meeting with all of the school liaisons tomorrow. Their main priority is to help teachers get things either copied or to those homeschoolers, or I don't want to call them homeschoolers, remote learners, sorry, wrong terminology, too many terms. Those remote learners, and also if those remote learners need to have some kind of additional support, they can reach out to that school liaison, and that school liaison can be that go-between between the teacher, so we're not pulling the teacher out of class time. We definitely need to, we've been slow getting them on board, and because we haven't been able to get someone to do the district, it hasn't been the perfect process, and we recognize that, and we're continuing to try to perfect that as we move forward.
Kim, what has happened to our my bad math, almost 50 people that were online learners? We started with 441, now we're down to 395. Are these kids actually back in the, are most
They're
of them
coming
sitting
back,
in the classroom?
Yeah, a lot of them are coming back, and that's all our ultimate goal. We honestly believe that the best education is in class, in person. And so a lot of times as we are speaking to these parents and these students that are struggling, we are encouraging them to come back to the traditional classroom. And a lot of them are, after a week or so, we had a lot of elementary students that returned to the classroom.
Good.
Yeah, and that's our goal.
As far as the 10% district-wise that are doing minimal work, that it's a little bit high, but even in a regular classroom,
Sure.
you can have approximately 5 to 7% of your kids that are there every day that are doing minimal work.
And that's 10% of the 300.
Yeah, so.
Yeah, 10%
So
of
it's
the
about,
300.
it's 1% of our district.
Yeah, so I
enrollment when you
mean,
look at it that way.
those kinds of numbers, even if you have them in the classroom, you can lead them to water, but you can't necessarily make them drink. And I would think that the problems created by the remote learning would just exacerbate those problems.
And that's it. I mean, and when you're running 2 classrooms and you have the students online that aren't participating, and then you have the issues that you have in your regular classroom, it's just one more thing. And that's a stress that is real, and as a teacher, I totally understand that frustration for them. She does too.
Thank you, Kim.
Thanks, Kim.
Okay, now I will seek a motion to approve the agenda as submitted and amended.
I so move.
Thank you, Ann. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Thank you, Andy. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by raising your hand. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Patron comments on agenda items? Seeing none, we'll move on to the consent agenda, which includes approval of the minutes from the emergency special meeting of 7/28/20, the regular business meeting of 8/11/20, and the public hearing of 8/25/20. Personnel report that includes retirements, resignations, leaves of absences, etc. The approval of the August 2020 claims number 57076 through 57307. The disposal of surplus technology, and a donation of $1,000 from Reed Health Tools for Schools to provide resources for our elementary health clinics. Seeing the agenda, I would like to seek a motion to approve.
Madam President, so moved.
Thank you, Chris. Do I hear a
Second.
second? Thank you, Mark. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by raising your hand. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We will now move on to action items. Personnel report, Mr. Harris.
Thank you. A little different after a couple of weeks, but it's been a good couple of weeks. Recommend the following staffing for classified staff: Rebecca Fuller, school social worker at CMS; Mina Hedrick, special education assistant at Fayette Central; Erica Huntsman, special education assistant at CHS; Holly Madden, the online liaison and PE supervisor for CHS; Lindsay Morris, Title I education assistant; Gracie Rose, Title I education assistant; and Rhonda Sparks, Title I education assistant. In extracurricular, have a few coaching recommendations here. Jamie Ham for 7th grade volleyball coach. John Marvel is head football coach at the middle school. Co-speech teachers, John and Ruth Ann Munger. And swim coach, Zane Spurlock for the middle school.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I'd like to seek a motion to approve the personnel report.
Take a motion.
Thank you, Andy. Do I hear a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Lori. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by raising your hand. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Now we'll move on to the approval of the Curriculum Planning Committee recommendation, Ms. Corsaro.
Last month I asked for, we had a discussion item on the foreign language standards where we asked to just have your permission to adjust them to the new standards, the new world language standards. So I just need permission to approve those standards. And again, we didn't change anything, we just aligned them to the new standards. So I just need approval for the, and we're not changing textbooks either, just need approval for the reworking of those standards, realignment is what I'm trying to say, realignment of the standards to the new updated state standards.
Sounds good. I'd like to seek a motion to approve the Curriculum Planning Committee recommendation.
I so move.
Thanks, Ann. Do I hear a second? Thank you, Chris. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by raising your hand. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Now on to Mr. Collins for the school board policy waiver of second reading and approval of policy 3.25.1 teacher appreciation grant.
Thank you, Mr. President, Board. Our typical guidance and requirements for school policy, for board policy, is that we have a first reading. It gives the board time to review and then ask questions, and then we make any adjustments and then at the next meeting, we have a second reading and approval. However, this is one that's timely, and it's become the gift that keeps on giving with the state as they change the rules. So it was a one-time approval for the distribution of teacher appreciation grants, and then last year they decided we need to do it every year. So we're going to do it again this year. The policy has not changed from 2019, except for the date at the bottom where you approved it again today. And what this outlines is the state provides some grant funding for teacher stipends, for certified staff stipends, and it's connected directly to being highly effective or effective in the ratings, and they would have worked the previous school year, and then they also must be employed on December 1st of this year to receive that money. So this outlines that piece for that, and then it also discusses the a stipend amount of 25% more for highly effective teachers, and what the board has historically done is offset that out of our education fund or general fund to pay the same stipend for all effective and highly effective teachers. So that is what we do, just as a side note. And then the other piece of this is that we distribute the stipends within 20 business days after we receive that funding from the Department of Education. So what I'm doing is asking for a waiver of the first reading of this policy and then subsequent approval of it. Ms. Jacobs.
Thank you.
So you can do that in one motion if you would like.
Scott, real quick, how much is the stipend payout this year?
It's based on an ADM figure. I think last year was around 600 and.
It is based on ADM, but there's a cap, so depending on what the total ADM statewide is, you get your share. It's usually between $500 and $600, I believe.
The ADM is obviously local, what we have here, but we're not gonna know that number until,
Our count day is the 18th. And then, I think the due date for that is the end of the month, the 30th, approximately, when we have to submit all that information to the state.
Was
So
it-
it's tied into what the state numbers
or
are.
wasn't our ADM changed this year till December or November or something like that?
No.
Well, we're gonna talk about that.
Okay.
At this point.
Okay.
So I'm
A
submitting.
moving target.
So you could do one motion where we waive the first reading and then approve the tag grant, or you can do them in separate, waive and then approve your pleasure.
So I'm going to go ahead and seek a motion to waive the
First reading,
the first reading of, is that 3.251, that one?
yes.
And that we're approving the second reading of
The same policy.
the same policy. Thank you.
Also move.
Thank you,
have to
Ann.
restate that.
No, I'm on the policy committee, I get ready to
Okay,
do it.
and a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Andy. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by raising your hand. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. A little confusing, but we got through that one. Okay, now the
That
20.
was too complicated for
Yeah,
what we
I
were
know,
doing.
right. 2020-2021 district calendar adjustment and e-learning day authorization.
Thank you, Ms. President. As we work through this fluid situation, in talking with our attorney, Michelle Cooper, we don't know for sure what may happen with our school days as we work through this pandemic. I checked and talked to Dr. White today, and he still gives us the all-go for keeping school in session. He said the data he's looking at, numbers are trending down just a little, but then there's data out there that's old, that's a few days old, that's higher. So he said we're not in red or orange. I believe he said we're in yellow still, which we'll find out they're doing this new figure where they come up with a scale 1 to 3 or 0 to 3. And so we were 1.5 is what we're currently at, which is in the mild range. So we're not in one of the top categories with the high risk at this point, but that could change each week because everything's fluid. But with that, we also know that we have an opportunity to do some e-learning days as needed this year. And what the board can do, rather than calling a special meeting if we need to adjust the calendar for any of those reasons, you can give the superintendent approval for this school year to adjust the calendar as needed. We do need to practice some e-learning, K-12, and we also need to find ways to help support our teachers, because as Kim said, the three pieces are time, training, and technology. And this synchronous teaching that we have many of our teachers involved in, it's great for our kids to stay in contact with their regular teacher, but it's also challenging with that synchronous learning. So this would allow us to work with our teachers and our administrators to build in some e-learning or flexible days as needed on a minimal basis. But our goal is to keep our kids in school, not move to any sort of a schedule where we don't have our kids in school as much as possible. So, and then the other is with the e-learning, we've debated that as a board and with me in the past. We have the capability now with our one-to-one piece where we can do e-learning for snow days or inclement weather days. And that's something I would like to include in this for full transparency, is that we look at using those days as well for snow makeup days, especially since we kicked the school year a week later already. And I think we will be ready. We still have training we're doing, but I think in talking with Kim, I think we'll be ready to do that when the bad weather comes. So this just provides us some flexibility in this unusual year to do that, so that the superintendent has authorization to do that.
And that's a positive out of all of this, that we can have e-learning on snow days. I think the teachers, the students, everybody will appreciate that.
Well, especially when the weather is so bad and you think, oh my gosh, do we have to send the kids, do we have to send the buses out?
Right.
And if we know, if we know ahead of time, and we have the lessons that we can put in the devices, it's the best of all worlds as far as that's
Right,
concerned.
and they can load that information onto their device, so the kid, that really takes that need away for the technology internet connection for, in some situations as well, where teachers have that pre-planning. So if we do any pre-planned e-learning days too, we can prepare ahead to prepare and support our kids that way.
And to me, that would be a really good practice run, to kind of see how this works, because Kim, you guys have done a fantastic job getting this up and going, but there's glitches. And if it's like anything else, practice makes it a whole lot better. So if we have some trial runs, so to speak, with our e-learning capabilities, it might benefit us a great deal when we need to use them.
And we don't know if we will, if the governor mandates a shutdown again. I believe the stance of this board is that kids need to be in school as much as possible, and I don't want to speak for you, but that's what you've shared, and that's our belief as well, as administrators, that we need our kids here when in as safe manner as possible. And our custodial staff and our building leaders and our teachers are going above and beyond in taking those steps. And
And so are the kids.
and the kids are doing a great job with masks.
The kids are doing a great job, and if you talk to them, they don't like wearing masks, and they don't like carrying backpacks at the middle school particularly. And the water bottles are kind of a hassle, but they're just so glad to be in school and with their friends and with all those trappings that go with it, like lunchtime and gym and all those good kinds of things. So I think the kids are making terrific adaptations. They don't like it necessarily, but it really beats the alternative for them. They want to be there. So as adults, we need to give them the best opportunity that we have.
So this gives us a little flexibility to react to situations that are needed, but with the goal of keeping our kids in school as much as possible. And I think the research will show, and the Association of Pediatricians, is the younger kids especially, we need to keep them in as much as possible. And so that's been our goal, and we're going to continue to do that as long as we're able, as long as the board supports that, and our health department certainly can. That's the latest. So I submit that to you for consideration for approval of the calendar for 2020-21.
Okay, so I'd like to seek a motion. Oh,
This is the calendar that you sent out to us with the
Yeah, but that's we're meeting with the teachers, administrators tomorrow, so that's just a sample of what.
Oh,
it could
okay,
be,
so
right?
that, what you sent us is a sample, not a set in stone.
Not yet.
Okay, just checking.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so I'd like to seek a motion to approve the 2020-2021 district calendar adjustment e-learning day authorization.
I'll make that motion.
No,
Thanks, Mark. Second?
I'll second.
Thanks, Lori. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by raising your hand. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Now we'll move on to discussion items and public hearing on the 2021 budget. Ms. Kellen Tollett.
Good evening, everyone. We're an experienced board, as you recall, every year. In 1 month, we're required to have a public hearing on the budget where I'll give you a little bit of information or as much as you'd like. You ask the public if they have any comments or questions for their input. And then next month, the budget's brought back to you for approval. Finance Committee received their budget packet at our Finance Committee meeting about 10 days ago. The other board members have a packet, pre-hole punched. I'm hoping you can reuse a notebook. And then there's a handout tonight that I kind of want to talk a little bit about. But let's start with Mr. Yaryan's question. So traditionally in the past, Count Day has been the second Friday after Labor Day. Current statutes indicates that butts and seat students are paid at 100% of the basic grant amount. Virtual students are paid at 85%. So if the count day would have been September 18th, with the lack of any other guidance, our virtual students would have been paid at 85%. So the Department of Education says we need to kick that can down the road if the legislature's not going to come back and address it. So they were going to move count day to December. However, there is a provision that various boards or departments among the state can make exceptions to rules, if you will, until they can be addressed potentially by the legislature. So a recommendation was made by the governor to the Board of Education to pay those virtual students for students who were enrolled in February in a regular classroom, but have now gone to a virtual program, theoretically because of the pandemic, at 100%, and let the legislature deal with the issue in January. It's when they come back, potentially, to agree to fully fund those students at 100%. There's no guarantee that they'll be funded at 100%. But this allows for the September count date. Some of the issues related to that, one of them in particular doesn't impact us, but it does impact a lot of communities that have migrant workers come in. Because if the count day was moved to December, they're gonna be gone. They're not gonna be in Indiana anymore doing their production. In addition to that, there were questions about how are we gonna pay the TAG grant? The Teacher Appreciation Grant is based on your enrollment in September. So are we to use those estimated numbers to make that payment, or what? Because in December is after when the money's required to be paid, because they're required to pay it by, I don't know, December 10th, and they would not have that reconciled. So the September count day is back on. For this period of time, we'll receive 100% funding. But if the legislature chooses not to make that the funding formula for this year, it would go back to our distributions July 1 through current. So that's a difference of $855 per student, that 15% difference. So that can amount to a lot of money for us. in the packet I've given you this evening, there's some comparative budget data for each of the funds. We're really down to 3 major funds. When they did away with the transportation fund and capital projects, you're really only talking about the education fund, the operations fund, and debt service. We have a little money left in rainy day. That budget for rainy day pretty much is for emergency capital projects that you might have. That's a place to go to without having to go through the process of an additional appropriation. Education fund, $22 million a year. That takes care of direct student costs. Teachers, building administrators, not central office, health assistants, media assistants, instructional technology that goes directly towards teachers and students is built into that education fund. The operations fund, on the other hand, is like district administration, payroll, accounts payable, maintenance, custodians, not direct student services. Your debt services, again, that pays your bonds or any, and the, I want to say the textbook, free and reduced lunch, student textbook, that is not covered from the state. I think last year we got less than 60% of what we turned in, so that balance goes on there. You'll notice a considerable increase in the debt service projected for this year. This year and next year, we're going to be a little bit higher than where we like to target ourselves. That's because we're going to start paying on the field house and we do not have debt rolling off. This year is particularly higher because the field house, when we started drawing down money from the state about 2 years ago, they start interest on each one of those drawdowns. So the first payment you make back to them is the principal is divided over the number of payments, number is semi-annual, but the interest is adjusted each time. We are paying all of that interest that accumulated from the first day we drew down till we drew the last amount down through January when we start paying it back. That money comes directly out of our state support payment, but it's built into the debt service, so we reimburse the general fund, or the education fund from the debt service for that amount. We always talk about, we estimate our levies and our rates high and our assessed valuation low. I know these numbers that are put in here are high. They will come down when the budget's worked, provided the assessed valuation is higher. The next page in your packet just shows the funding, if you will, this year compared to last year for the basic grant, the honors diploma, special ed grant. All of these are student-driven costs, a per student amount. And this calculates about 99% of the money that you get into the education fund. The next page is the graph that I've prepared for you for years that shows the impact of our declining enrollment. In 2010, if you recall, kindergartners were counted as half, but they're counted as full now. We've dropped more than 627 students in 10 years, based on the estimate for this fall, which the estimate for this fall is too high. When I had to give the state that estimate back in the spring, we had no idea we were going to have virtual students, that the pandemic was going to continue. So the next pages talk about that decline in enrollment. I estimated 3,150 students. Now, I believe I've been told we've gone up a tick, but when I prepared this information for Finance Committee, the best numbers we had said we had about 3,053 students. We'll know a week from Friday how many students we really have, or I hope we'll know. So every student that I've overestimated, that will be $6,580 that we'll not collect per student. If they do not count the virtual students as 100%, you could potentially lose an additional $855 for those 390 students that are currently virtual. So it's very important, if you're talking to legislators, to use the word fully funded. You've got some legislators out there using the term adequate funding. When they use that term, what they are saying is that they believe the 85% is enough for the virtual kids. Well, that's probably true if all you have is a virtual program. But we're regular schools. We still have bricks and mortar to maintain whether that student has a butt in our classroom seat or is sitting at home doing their work. So for those schools that are totally virtual, understand they don't, that 85% is the 15% that they're saying should go from your education fund over to your operations, because in a virtual environment, you don't have a custodian, you don't have a building to maintain. Well, we do. We just have students choosing to work at home, do their work at home. However, at some point, the plan is for them to come back into our buildings. So if you hear someone say adequate funding, that means that they're supporting the 85% for the virtual students. You know, I'm just gonna put it out there. The reason they wouldn't go back is they don't wanna go back and make any decisions right now that would cost them votes at the polls. So it's easier for them to not call a special session, not deal with any of the issues, wait till they're reelected, and then make the decisions. So,
Jane,
that's my opinion.
Jane, how much virtual students, how much is going to impact, in your opinion, the donut counties around Indianapolis that seem to drive education funding? There are some of those that are on hybrids. There are some of those that are completely virtual. If it's gonna cost some of those little donut communities a lot of money to only have 85%, might that tip, in your opinion, might that tip the balance toward full funding?
I don't have any idea. I mean, I have no way of knowing how they're gonna vote. I think that the issue too is gonna be, you know, while this year they say they're gonna fully fund, I have no idea how they're gonna sustain that into 2021 and 2022 when you have revenues coming in significantly below what's estimated. I'll be surprised if they don't cut the tuition support amount. It's been growing the last 2 years by small amounts, but it has been growing. I don't know how they'll fully fund that.
Well, the pandemic has affected everything.
Yeah.
As far as income, all kinds of income
But
taxes.
I have no pulse on how they're gonna vote when they go back in January.
But it's,
And I think that there'll be, you know, if they do stick with that 85, there's gonna be a reconcilement process too, or at least from what a webinar I saw was, if that remains, they're gonna look at Susie and how many days was Susie in a seat in a classroom and how many days was Susie online. And if she was online one more day than she was in a seat, they're gonna call her a virtual student. So that's a moot point if they agree to fund them at 100%. But they've added all these new categories for how the kids are being educated, so.
Janie, real quick, yeah, question about debt service. On our field house there, did we come in at or under budget on that project?
Right now, we're under budget.
Okay.
We have money coming back from each of the contractors. Now, we had some add-on services. We have some things that we're gonna package in with those savings. Because of those savings, we need a PA system in the office. We need for the air handling system in the field house to talk to the air handling system in the main part of the building. That was an issue that the design company did not plan for.
We're working with them.
Yeah,
Substantially.
we've tried to put some pressure on them.
Yeah.
So, but I still believe that you'll come in under what the purchase order totals were issued, even after you consider those. It'll be a long time before you pay out those final purchase orders, probably, I mean, several months down the road, because you have the right to identify some areas
Sure.
of concern before you release that final retainage, so. But I ran that the other day, and it's really about $20,000 savings per contractor from what the purchase orders were issued at. But again, we have some other costs we're gonna take care of, so.
We're still waiting on a couple of things to be done right, with, with some gate and some different things, so.
Yeah,
Yeah, but I think
We're
it's,
holding cash until they,
yeah, I think it's really nice to know that, I mean, even the public, people watching, that they came in pretty much on point, if not a little less. Because, I mean, we got a phenomenal field house there, got a great facility, so, I mean,
and the
y'all
timing
did a good
was
job.
good. If we had
Very
gone
nice job.
6 months later,
Oh
or a year
my
later.
gosh.
Oh, man.
Yeah, with the tariffs and everything, it would
We
have
wouldn't
really,
have probably tackled it.
yeah.
these two sheets here right now, the first one is fully funding based on my estimate versus the other. And it looks like if we appear to be down that many kids, the revenues might be about $400,000 less than I had projected. If they go with a virtual student at 85%, that adds about another $100,000 to that. So kind of putting it in perspective of dollars and cents. In the packet, I wanted to give you a projection of our debt service, so you can understand where your opportunities are gonna be for adding debt to keep it consistent. As I shared with you, 2021 and 2022 are a little bit higher than what we would like them to be because of the field house coming on before some things have rolled out. But after that, you're probably gonna want to consider what are the corporation's needs, and do we need to be thinking about another bond issue to keep our debt consistent. So I wanted you to have this information related to that. And then on the operations fund, this is, they give you what your maximum levy is. It's about $6.8 million. Property taxes property tax caps are projected to be a little over $1.3 million. All of that goes to the operations fund. You transfer about 15% from the education fund over to the operations fund to help it out. But then you lose $1.3 million in circuit breaker, the property tax caps. So, you just rob Peter, pay Paul, so. The proposed levy is about 7.1 million with a cash balance of 2.4 is our projected. So that's a net of 4.6 million. So it's a difference between your net available and the net of what you have, about 800,000. I think you'll not have to make many or any cuts to your capital project or your operations fund when the budget gets approved, but time will tell on that. So. I know you're riveted by this and you can hardly wait for this meeting every year, but it'll be different next year, so. So, are there any questions, or do you want to open it up for public comments?
I'd just like to thank you. You have done a fabulous job with this during your tenure there, and why you wanted to retire, I understand, but, and I know that it's in good hands, but this has been, it's been a learning experience, and I hope the people that are watching understand. It's not as simple as we all kind of thought it was, and you've done a really good job of explaining it over the years, and the Fayette County School Corporation is in decent shape financially because of decisions that you have made and previous boards have made. So that is very much appreciated, and I hope that the population as a whole understands how difficult all this is. It's like juggling things in the air, and you've done a super job over that over the years. So
I'm concerned about 2022 and 2023 for you.
yeah.
If things do not change in the economy. We are well-positioned now, and we have been, and we've been frugal and, made good decisions. But that lack of state revenue is very concerning to me.
Well,
And schools make up a large percentage of the state
Yeah.
budget. So, please keep that in mind as you move forward and you make decisions that where are we gonna be? How are we gonna maintain all the good that we've done? So,
oh, it's like your IRA. Is people, we don't know exactly what's gonna happen to that either, so. it makes it-
Well, and our state doesn't print money like the federal government.
No.
So that's the other challenge, is I think we're down $2 billion. We've blown through the surplus at the state level with this, and as long as our country stays shut down, or we're not gonna see that revenue go up. And so that's the worry, is
Yeah.
what we're gonna be facing in a couple of years.
Any other questions or comments from this group?
Any public comment?
From the public comment? Thank you, Janie.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much. Okay, now we are ready for the school executive summaries by Ms. Corsaro.
Gosh, that's a tough act to follow there. Okay, tonight I'm just presenting to you the executive summaries. Indiana Code requires that all of our schools have a school improvement plan. Obviously, COVID has changed a lot of things. We were unable to give iLearn and NWA in the spring, so the state has pretty much allowed us to maintain our current school improvement plans. We have made some minor modifications, but because we didn't have the student data to update, we will have a little bit of a gap. But we will continue to focus on Marzono's framework, which is, the safe and collaborative cultures and building relationships, effective teachers in all classrooms, and that guaranteed and viable curriculum. All of our school improvement plans are on the school websites. If you want to go look at the body of them, it talks about the demographics of the school and the different places where curriculum is stored. But the executive summaries are really the meat of the plans, and it gives you their specific goals and how they're going to reach those goals and what professional development's going to be implemented to reach those goals. So next month I will bring it back for your approval. So this is just a discussion item at this point, and then gives you an opportunity to view those plans on their websites if you choose to do so.
And these are submitted to the state.
Yeah, they're submitted to the state on our legal assurances, standard 1, and they're due after October board meeting. So we need to discuss them and then get them approved on next month's board meeting.
Well, just a question that may be ignorant, but since we weren't able to do the NWEA, so we didn't really have the data to show whether our school improvement plans as created last year
Right.
came to fruition. Are we just repeating, basically?
Basically, the state said because we don't have the data to support that those goals were met, you need to still go back and reflect on them. Are they good goals? are the goals that you want to continue with. But most of your student achievement goals are still the same because we don't have anything to say that the strategies that we put in place were effective or weren't effective. So you don't want to change course unless you have good data to support that. So for the most part, all of our goals are still the same when it comes to iLearn and NWEA. There may be some different goals that if they're working on attendance or how they're meeting those goals may change based on some of the changes that we've had to make in our schools this year. But the overall arching goal is the same in terms of iLearn and NWEA. That increase, we're always looking to increase our percentages and show growth.
And, you know, you mentioned the small percent of students who aren't doing anything. Are those at the high school level?
We do have more at the secondary level, middle school, high school, than we do at elementary.
Okay.
But we also have elementary students who are doing minimal work as well. So it's not just one specific group.
I just worry, I mean, for schools, especially for the high school, that, you know, it's a great goal about the graduation rate. I know we're always focused on that. And then I worry about any kids that aren't showing up for school and that, I mean, and this isn't added, I mean, maybe we always have this amount, that's always a challenge, but.
I think it's a little different this year because you have your traditional kids
Right,
that are in
right.
the classroom, and then you have the kids who aren't in your classrooms, and the ones that aren't in your classrooms, it's hard to have those daily conversations with them.
Right, to kind of see what they need.
You have to depend more on the parents to be that support for you and reaching out to those kids and making them realize the importance of doing the work. And, you know, whereas if you have a kid that comes into your classroom, if they haven't turned an assignment in all week, you can say, hey, I'm still waiting on that assignment, or hey, I'm still, you know, what are you doing, can I help? So I think it creates a little bit different challenge, but I think overall teachers have always struggled with a small percentage of kids
Just not doing work.
what they're required to do. And that's where it's that whole teamwork of parents and teachers working together. And
Yeah. Thank you, Kim. Any other-
And more difficulty in building those relationships.
Oh, I know.
When we have
I know.
online students.
sure.
Right,
Yeah.
which contributes, I mean, I think whether you're talking about attendance, graduation rate, whatever, having kids there to build those relationships improves their,
Performance.
whatever, to want to finish.
Well, wasn't it last year or the last few years, Randy and the other administrators at the high school have literally chased kids down toward the end of the school year and said, look, this is where you are, just come in, let's get this over, you can graduate from high school. And there were always a few in line at graduation that you say, oh, wow, you know, and the kudos go out to the administration at the high school, because they got those kids there and made them finish. And when you're virtual, that's so difficult to do, because it's like the person knocking on your door and breathing down your neck and saying, you need to get this done. And that's unfortunate that it has to be done, but the administration at the high school has done a super job with that over the last few years, getting some reluctant students to finish their coursework and to graduate.
Thanks, Kim. Now it's time for public comments. Persons wishing to make the board aware of suggestions, ideas, and/or comments may address the board at this time. Comments which involve personnel or students must be discussed in private. Seeing none, move on to superintendent discussion group reports, principal director reports, no announcements, director of human resources report, nothing from Randy, director of finance, nothing from Janie, assistant superintendent.
Good.
And then last, Scott,
I
superintendent.
can't help it.
I know. We wait with bated breath.
I know, everyone does, watching the clock, but I just, want to reiterate our appreciation for our staff and the big task that has happened. And from transportation, it was so nice seeing the kids on the buses and seeing them get off the buses and the smiles under their masks as they got off the buses. Their eyes were smiling, but it took a lot of work. It took a lot of work by technology. I know Terry put in a few hours on this, and his team And then our custodial maintenance staff, we pushed them hard, our technology maintenance, they were under the gun. And just because we were constrained by the supply chain, which was one of the big factors in delaying school that you all approved, was getting their stuff. But just that team effort, I'm really proud of the good people we have working here supporting our kids. So wanted to share that, and I want to share our, that our kids are experiencing school and they're enjoying it and they're happy. And so that means a lot. So I appreciate your support of education of our kids, and we're going to keep on keeping on as long as we can safely do that. So.
Thank you, Scott. Anything under for the good of the cause? Okay, seeing none.
For the safety of all, I make a motion.
Do I hear a second? All those in favor signify by raising your hand. Opposed, same sign. Meeting adjourned.